Welcome. I am Mary Claire, and welcome back to Peak, the official Grow Sport podcast. Brian, here we go again.
Good to be here.
All right. Today we're going to continue the conversation. Just as a reminder for any listeners out there, we are going through Dr. Brian's new book, The Culture Code, and we started from why Brian even wrote the book, and we've gone chapter by chapter, running through really the acronym behind the Grow Sport model or the sport model, from S and P and O and R. Actually, we're on R. So results accountability, make it count, or it doesn't count.
Right.
So, Brian, you and I are pretty passionate about the topic of accountability. I am in part because I have at one point been very poor at creating accountability, and then somebody gave me a system, and his name is Dr. Brian Ritchie. And I think it's still, just for my personality, it's still an ongoing growth opportunity for me, but a process and a system has personally given me a leap up. So I'm excited to talk about this today, Brian, and I want to start the conversation around the topic of how accountability is typically done. And then we'll get into, again, how it is we can do accountability or create accountability with the system.
And I really hope that from this discussion, all of our listeners have a real paradigm shift, a new view of what this word even means. It's one of those words that's been thrown around so much in so many places and ways that it almost doesn't mean anything anymore. We say, hey, let's hold each other accountable. And what does that mean?
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a study done. I thought this was really fascinating. Study done among CEOs, and they asked the CEOs if they thought that the year-end annual review had any value at all, and I mean any value. And from that, they found that only 6% of CEOs felt like that annual review had any value, and yet almost all of their firms still did it, even though they recognized that there was very little value. And what that says to me is that they didn't think there was a better way to do accountability. And so if you think about this, right, you're going to get together for 30 minutes and review an entire year's performance. It almost always results in this sort of up or down, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of environment, or there's no meaningful discussion about performance at all, because even that's difficult to do. So typically we talk accountability, and we talk accountability, but nobody really does it. And it's because it's super hard to do, and it requires consistency, and it requires a different view, frankly, of what that looks like.
I think I'm going to build on that. And I think the other thing accountability people think it is, and this is the other extreme of micromanagement.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do, and then make sure you're doing the things that I want you to do as I want you to do it. So talk to me about that. Well, actually, we can use that too as kind of the intro.
No, that's a great foil, right? Because if you think about accountability as a vertical, unidirectional relationship where the boss is asking the person, account for what you've done. Really what they're saying is account for what I've told you to do.
Yeah.
Account for what I think you should have gone and done, which, by the way, are really the supervisor's activities and tasks, and they're asking you to be responsible for it. In that case, that micromanagement is so counterproductive, right? I mean, it's a productivity killer in that sense. So if you've got this vertical relationship between the person who's doing the work and the supervisor, what you end up with at the end of the day is really just like, have I done what that person wanted me to do?
Okay, so let's dive in some topics that you cover in the chapter, and I'm gonna mention two of them because they're related.
Okay.
So one of the things, and I remember when learning the system, this concept of multi-dimensional.
Yeah, multi-dimensional.
Multi-dimensional accountability, and then there's a relationship between that and being the CEO of your own space. So when we started getting into the how to do accountability differently, let's start with some of the kind of the premise behind your model.
Yeah, so I love that you said multi-directional and multi-dimensional. And this is where the paradigm shift should begin for most people. Accountability really needs to be in every direction. It needs to be up to the supervisor, but it also needs to be down from the supervisor to the team. It needs to be horizontal within the team, and it needs to be horizontal between the teams. and then up and down for teams as well. So if you think about this as multidimensional and multidirectional, the point here is that you need to be accountable to everybody in the organization. Now, if you stop and think for a second, can I be accountable to everyone in the organization, their desires for me? No, that would be
No.
impossible. The only thing I can be accountable for are the things I own, are the things I said I would do. So I have to be the CEO of my own space. I have to understand what the organization needs from me, what it expects from me, and then what I have committed to do in relationship to that task. And then I'm accountable to myself first and to everybody else for what I said I would do. So it changes the focus on this from someone saying, let me make sure you've done what they want you to do, to making sure that I've done what I said I would do.
And the reason that we're encouraging or recommending or and coaching folks to switch that paradigm is that I'm going to take some words out of your mouth, but in theory, you're hired to do your job because you can be and are or growing to be an expert in that space, an expert of your craft, which is something we talk about. And this idea of being the CEO of your own space. So let's talk to me more about the only reason I'm bringing it up is because that is often, like when we're working with clients, when we use that term or use that phrase, you see the shift happening in their mind.
Yeah.
So
and the shift needs to happen in both places, right, Mary Claire? It needs to happen both with the person and their supervisor. So if the supervisor doesn't believe that the person they've hired is the very best person to do that job, then one of two things is going on. Either you've hired badly, or you as a leader haven't really internalized your role. So if I hire you and I think I'm better at you than what you do, then I've not hired well, or I've not understood that I really am not that good at what you do. And the truth is that most leaders think they're better at these things than they really are. The person who knows the job best is the person who's doing it every day. So why not hold them accountable to what you want them to do based on what they think they should do? They're the ones who should know it. So again, this paradigm shift is really larger than we might think on its face. It has to, the leader has to think about it differently, and the person needs to think about it differently who's in the job.
Okay, so we've talked about there's a couple shifts in the model. One is the idea of multidimensional accountability that we're talking about, which is linked to setting people up to be hiring in a certain way and setting people up in a certain way, both from a mindset and a capabilities perspective, to be the CEO of their own space.
Right.
I think the other thing, so that's one shift. We're shifting accountability from an up, down to up, down, down, up, and sideways to your teams. I think when we get into kind of how we recommend having these accountability meetings, there's also a shift in terms of we're creating accountability within a group, and so that's one, which we'll talk about here in a second, and then the cadence of accountability.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
So why don't we move into how do we recommend having these accountability type conversations, right?
So I want you to just think through this logically with me for a minute. If I shift the paradigm from everyone else's view of me and what they think I should be doing, which leads to a once a year, employee review, to my determination of what I should be doing every day, right? How often should I be reporting on my activities that I've said I would do? And you can see that it has to be way more often than once a year. In fact, we would argue that the best cadence for this is weekly. Now, I know that when I first say that, people are like, no way. But if you really think about it logically, it starts to make a ton of sense, right? I mean, if you think we've modeled a lot of what we've done after athletic franchises. And if you think about a lot of these, they'll go and they'll play games during the week, and then they will review. And they'll say, how did we do? And then they practice, and then they play again, right? In that same model, we want to look and say, okay, this is what I'm going to go do for this next period of time. And again, we argue that it's a week, and I'll tell you why in a second. But then we're going to review. How did we do? And what tweaks or changes or adjustments do we need to make? And then let's try again. And you're going to see a couple of really interesting things. One, that's going to be the heart of innovation. Yeah. Right. And you're going to really review and hold people accountable to what they said that they would do. Then you get a really strong team interaction in all of that as well. So if you think about this weekly accountability, what we're arguing is that every week you want to have a meeting with your team to do three things and only three things. And this meeting should be very fast. We're talking 15 to 45 minutes max, where every team member says, this is what I said I would do. This is what I actually accomplished. And this is what I'm going to do next week, right? So what did I say I'm going to do? What did I get done? What does it look like on my scoreboard? What's the progress? And what am I going to do the next week?
Yeah.
And if you do this, you get a very interesting outcome, right? Transparency goes up, trust goes up, vulnerability goes up, and innovation goes up.
Yeah, from having run those meetings and been a part of those meetings for a number of years now, it changes the dynamic of the conversation. Yes, there's not this up down necessarily. There may be a little bit of that. If somebody's not doing their job,
Yeah,
you still need to have that
correct.
conversation, period.
Right.
The difference is if they're not doing that job, it becomes apparent very quickly. Either they're not doing their job or they're not set up for success to do their job. There's barriers, so to speak. We'll get into how leaders address that here in a minute. But there's this dynamic. That vulnerability piece is huge that you just said, because if I've done what I said I'm going to do and my scoreboard isn't changing, then it's not because I'm not trying, at least, which,
Yeah.
but I'm not trying the right things. So instead
Right.
of waiting till the end of a month or a quarter or a year to assess, did I do the right things? We're able to learn and problem solve on the spot. And so you get those incremental gains that we've talked about throughout in a number of these episodes. That's where a lot of it is coming from, because we're problem solving on the fly, and it's usually in a group of people, which is it's a huge shift from how things typically operate.
There is so much value in here to unpack. And it's just, I really encourage our listeners to really think about this and logically, kind of unpack this a little bit in their own organization. And you'll see that there's so much unintended value in here. And you have to give credit to Franklin Covey a little bit here. They came up with this idea to begin with and these lead measures. And it's just so powerful in the way that it creates a constant reflective view of what we do and then allows us to innovate on that as we go forward. So think about this and how it multiplies in terms of the length of time for this process. So if I'm going to do this once a month, so let's say I'm going to go do something and you're going to evaluate me in 30 days. And let's say you find out that I've not done it. So now I'm going to go try again. It's going to be 60 days before you find out whether I'm on track or not. That's almost a quarter of time, right? For an organization, that's an eternity. And if you think about this from a week, every 7 days, then I'm back in the saddle. I'm back in the saddle again within another 7 days. It's very just in time focused around the behaviors that you need to move the needle. So you're not getting to the end of the year and you're saying, wow, I didn't realize we hadn't made any progress on this goal. You know that every 7 days.
Yeah. I think, okay, so I'm going to make one more comment here, but just to be really clear for listeners. So we've talked about what accountability is and isn't, and what it isn't, what it typically is, and what we believe it should be.
Right.
We've got a process, both a process from a weekly cadence and a process from inside that meeting, what one should talk about. So we recommend weekly. We recommend in that conversation, we talk about, what did I commit to doing last week? How did it go? Where do I stand on my goal or on my scoreboard relative to where I should be in the year? And what am I committing to next week? And I just want to highlight this. The other ancillary benefit that exists is that often we'll set a goal and we'll set a target, and it's a SMART goal, right? I say that SMART goals are great, but I think one of the things that I found valuable is the process of having to go through and say, if I have a year-long goal or a 6-month goal, I have to upfront, before I get going, decide, where should I be on this goal relative each week? What should my progress look like each week? So I have to do some critical thinking and place some bets on what my activities are going to drive on a week-to-week basis. That in and of itself, and just looking at the goal on looking at my performance and relative to where I should be that week versus kind of what the end game is also a really healthy process, and one that is different, at least from my experience, than other models or other processes. That exercise alone is valuable.
I love that you said that, because what it allows you to do is be very disciplined about what
Yeah.
it is you're trying to accomplish, but also really learn in a very disciplined sort of way what works and what doesn't work. I mean, you can think about this in a casual way. We're like, hey, this is my goal. And, I'm going to look at it every quarter, every 6 months. How are we doing? And it's just very loosey goosey. You don't really know what's working, what's driving it or not driving it. Here you're forced to really look at this and say, how far should have I been? Was I wrong? Should have we done something different? Was there some other approach to this? Was I being overly optimistic when I set the goal in the first place? Or under optimistic. I mean, the point is that there's so much learning in here that we don't take advantage of because we're not systematically and cadence driven around our accountability.
Yeah. Well, I hope listeners enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoy having it, because I continue to learn the more we talk about this. We've been talking about it for years at this point. The deeper you get into something, the more nuanced it gets, and the more opportunity there is to improve. So, Brian, thank you. I encourage folks to go get the book, Culture Code, continue and engage these podcasts. We've got resources both on LinkedIn, on the website, on YouTube, and the book, of course. Feel free to reach out if we can be helpful at all as you go through this process. But Brian, thanks for joining again.
It was awesome.
We'll dive into kind of the last part of the model from a team strength perspective, and we'll come back to accountability and the beauty of what this level of accountability and this type of conversation creates from strengthening the team performance. So looking forward to that one, Brian. So thank you for all your listeners for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please follow us on Spotify or wherever it is you get your podcasts, and we look forward to talking to you next time. We hope your drive towards peak performance is successful. Talk to you later.